Okay, this is the chapter 4, sections 4 and 5 review for the test that I'm going to give tomorrow. I know I wasn't planning on doing it early, but I think it's in our best interest to do it now because we have a 3-day weekend, and I think y'all are going to forget a lot of it. So I'd rather you get as much of it out of your head as you possibly can, and if you have to finish it up on Tuesday whenever we get back, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? What's that? Right. So I'd rather you try to get as much out of your head as you possibly can tomorrow rather than, have more time lost. So, very first thing you need to know, I'm going to make sure this is recording. Is going to go on Classroom for you. Okay? You have 6 vocabulary terms. The 6 vocabulary terms are going to be A, B, C, D, period, and reference angles. Literally, I'm giving them to you right now. You need to know what A does, B does, C does, D does, your period, and what a reference angle is. Okay? In addition to that, you will have 2 problems, like 37 through 51 on homework, page 284 through 285. You have 1 problem, like 1 through 12, 4 problems, like 17 through 24, and 67 through 74, and 3 problems, like 91 through 96, and then 2 problems, like 45 on section 4, 5, worksheet 2, and 3. Okay? So 12 problems that require work and only 6 vocabulary. I don't think that's too bad. We're ready to go yet? Okay. Now, given A, B, C, and D over here, what does A do to the problem? A is your amplitude, and what is amplitude again? The height of the graph, mostly from the height of the level, right? So it's how high the graph will be and how low the graph will be, yes? This is what gives your max level node. What does B do? What's B responsible for? It changes your period. This changes the period. And what is a period? What is a period? What is the period of sine and cosine? Period is defined to be 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b, but what is it in Webster's dictionary? What does it say? Okay, the period is going to be the number of units it takes to get around 1 revolution of the unit circle, right? So that's why it's typically 2 pi, right? So the period is going to be how long it takes to make 1 revolution. Time it takes for 1 revolution. Yes? Okay, what does D do? What does D do to the graph? What do you think? Moves it left and right? And what does C do? Moves it up and down. Right? So that's what we know. Those are your 6 vocabulary terms. What about a reference angle? What is a reference angle? Reference angle is an acute angle, meaning it is less than 90 degrees, and it gives all values of sine and cosine around the unit circle. right? It gives all the sine and cosine values around the unit circle. The only thing that would change is if it was positive or negative based upon the quadrant you're in, right? Okay, so the next thing your brain needs to be able to do is to state the measure of the reference angle of theta you would use to evaluate the following function. So how would I find the reference angle of 17 pi over 7? I just want the reference angle. Well, 17 pi over 7, I need to find where that's at, right? So that's going to be 7 pi over 7. That's going to be 14 pi over 7. So where is 17 pi over 7 at? Probably quadrant 1. Do we all understand that? Yes? Okay? So that means right here, it's going to be a corkscrew angle that is wrapping around and landing over here. Okay? So I need to simply take 17 pi over 7 and subtract 14 pi over 7, and that's going to give me 3 pi over 7. That is going to be your reference angle. Yes? Okay, what about the next one, the sine of negative 135? Well, that's a negative angle, and that negative angle is going to be typically over here. So how do I get the little slice that I need, which is going to be right here? That's 180 minus 135, right? And what does that give you? 45 degrees. If I gave you the angle in radians, I want the answer in radians. If I gave you the angle in degrees, I want your answer in degrees. Does everybody understand what I just said? Okay, you have 2 problems like that on the test tomorrow. Next, it says find 2 solutions of the equation that fall on the unit circle between 0 and 2 pi. Give your answers in degrees and radians. This is just like problems 91 through 96. 91 through 96. I'm telling you that the cosecant of theta is 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Did I memorize cosecant of theta? What did I memorize? I memorized its reciprocal, which is going to be the sine of theta. So the sine of theta is 3 over 2 square roots of 3. But that's not in the form that I know. So I'm going to rationalize this. So that's 3 square roots of 3 over 6. So that's going to reduce down to the square roots of 3 over 2. So what angle, and I need 2 of them, okay, has a sine value of the square root of 3 over 2? The sine x or sine y? Sine is your y value. So if I'm looking at my quadrants, sine is positive. In what 2 quadrants? I already heard. I know, but he's getting an education. It's wonderful. That's great. Okay, so what 2 quadrants is sine positive in? Quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. Do we all understand that? Sine is your y value, quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So in quadrant 1, what angle has a y value of the square root of 3 over 2? 1. Hands to the clock. Hands to the clock are my cosine values. 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. So 1/2 is paired with the square root of 3 over 2, so that has to be 60 degrees. 60 degrees is pi over 3. Yes, you guys need to be better at that. Then, that's my quadrant 1 angle. Now, what about my quadrant 2 angle? Well, I need to find my 60 degree angle in quadrant 2. Yes? So that's going to give me 180 minus 60, which is 120. 120 degrees is equal to 2 pi over 3. Okay, what about the cotangent of theta is equal to -1? Well, what is cotangent understood to be? Cotangent of theta is understood to be your cosine value over your sine value. In order for that to be -1, that implies that my sine and cosine values have to be what? In order for them to cancel out and give me a value of -1, my sine and cosine values have to be the same but opposite signs. So with that being said, where is my cotangent negative? My quadrants are going to be 2 and 4. That my cotangents are negative, right? My x over my y, x divided by y, okay? So when I am in quadrant 2, this is referring to a 45-degree angle, but that's in quadrant 1, and I need to be in quadrant 2. So that's 180 minus 45, which is going to give you 135, which is going to be 3 pi over 4. How do I know that? Because the only way I can get 1 is if my sine and cosine values are exactly the same. Square root 2 over 2, square root 2 over 2. Yes? Do we all understand that? Okay? In quadrant 4, I'm going to take 360 minus 45, which is going to give you what? 315, right? 315 is the same thing as, well, take 145-degree angle off of 360, or 2 pi, and that's going to give you 7 pi over 4. And those are going to be your angles for those. Okay? You have 3 problems like this tomorrow on the test. And that is just like problems 91 through 96. Okay? Make sure you study for that. Okay, then the next thing is I'm going to give you an ordered pair, and I want you to find the 6 trig functions. I'm going to give you an ordered pair, and I want you to find the 6 trig functions. So this is x and this is y. And remember, we're utilizing this right here. So this is -2 squared plus 6 squared is equal to r squared. So 4 plus 36 is equal to r squared. 40 is equal to r squared. Take the square root. What do we all know about r? It can never be negative. It's a distance. It's measurable. So this is going to be plus the square root of 40. Do I have any perfect squares in 40? 4 times 10. So that's going to be positive 2 square roots of 10. That's my r value. So now that I found r, how do I find my 6 trig functions? Well, sine of theta is going to be y over r, so that's 6 over 2 square roots of 10. So that's 3 over the square roots of 10, which is 3 square roots of 10 over 10. Yes? If I know sine, then I know cosecant. Cosecant of theta is going to simply be the square root of 10 over 3. Yes? Now I need to find cosine. Cosine of theta is going to be x over r, and that's going to be -2 over 2 square roots of 10, which is -1 over the square root of 10, which is simply the square root of 10, negative square roots of 10 over 10. If I know the cosine, then I know the secant, which is going to be negative square roots of 10. Then, if I know secant, I'm going to go ahead and find tangent. Tangent of theta is going to be your y over your x, and that's going to be 6 over -2, which happens to be -3. If I know tangent, then I know cotangent, which is going to be -1/3. You have one problem like this on the test tomorrow. You have one problem like this on the test tomorrow. Can you do it? Okay? Now, you have, I think, 4 problems on the test like this. So this says, find the indicated trig value in the specified quadrant. So how do I find the indicated trig function, which is secant, if I'm given that the tangent of theta is equal to 32? I'm in quad 3, but I need to find the secant. Well, there's a couple ways you can go about this, truly. Tangent is understood to be y over x. You can find r using x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, or you can use 1 plus tan squared is equal to secant squared. Doesn't matter. Both work, okay? So if I go ahead and keep going with this, this is going to be 3 squared plus 2 squared is equal to r squared. So 9 plus 4 is equal to r squared. So 13, the square root of that is equal to r. And if I want to find secant, I simply am going to take r over x. X is going to be what? Now, this is where you got to think a little bit. Tangent is positive. That means, what quadrant am I in? I'm in the 3rd quadrant, which means my tangent's positive, but my sine and cosine values are what? Negative, which means my x is actually going to be a -2, and my r is the square root of 13, and that's where you're going to get that value right there. Do we understand that? Yes or no? Make sense? That is probably the easiest way for you to do it. If you want to find secant doing it the other way, it's very simple. This is going to be 1 plus 3 over 2 squared. So that's going to be 1 plus 9/4. This is 4 over 4. So that's going to give you a 13 over 4 is equal to the secant squared of theta. Take the square root. And that's plus or minus the square root of 13 over 2 is equal to the secant. But you have to know that you are in quadrant 3, so therefore you want negative square roots of 3 over 2 because you are in quad 3. You with me? Same exact philosophy though. Let's do one more of those. So this says the sine of alpha is equal to 2 square roots of 6 over 5. I'm in quadrant 2, and I want you to find the tangent. So if I'm in quad 2, quadrant 2 is this. Yes? My tangent has to be what?
Negative.
Has to be negative, right? Has to be negative. Sine is understood to be what sign? Over r, very good. So that means that y is 2 square roots of 6 and r is 5. Yes? So this is going to be x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. So I'm going to have x squared plus 2 square roots of 6 quantity squared is equal to 5 squared. So that's x squared plus 4 times 6 is equal to 25. Do we all understand that 2 square roots of 6 times 2 square roots of 6 is going to be 4 square roots of 36? The square root of 36 is 6. So this is going to give you x squared plus 24 is equal to 25. So x squared is equal to, subtract the 24 over, 1. So x is equal to plus or minus 1. I'm in quadrant 2, so what does x have to be? So x equals 1 or x equals -1. It cannot be positive, it has to be negative because I'm in quadrant 2, and I want to find the tangent. So the tangent of theta is going to be y over x. Y is understood to be 2 square roots of 6, and x is -1, so this is going to be -2 square roots of 6. Make sense? You have 4 problems like that tomorrow on the test. And then the last type of problem that you're going to have on the test, you have 2 of these. And I'm going to be straight up honest with you. If you have 2 of these, I taught you 2 different types of these functions, did I not? One where it starts at 0 and one where there's a horizontal shift and it does not start at 0. Chances are you will have what?
Both.
Both, right? So that you need to determine which one is which. The process is exactly the same for both. So here I go. The very first thing I need to find is what whenever I look at these problems. Amplitude. What is my amplitude? Absolute value of 5 is 5. Why do I want the absolute value? Because if it was negative, it's a distance. It needs to be positive. If it's negative, it changes the pattern. You all understand that? Every max turns into a min, every min turns into a max. Okay, the next thing I need to find is my period. That is going to be 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. So that's going to be 2 pi divided by, what is b? Pi over 2. When you divide by a fraction, you are multiplying by its reciprocal, and that's going to give you a 4. Yes? What's the next thing we need to find? The interval. So if I'm finding the interval, that is simply going to be my period divided by 4, because there are 5 different regions. So that's why you're dividing, or 5 different quadrant angles. That's why you're dividing by 4 to get to 4 different regions. 4 divided by 4 is going to give you 1. After you do that, what's the next thing you do? I'm sorry? I need to find my level. So if I find my level is 0 plus or minus c. What is c in this case? So 0 minus 3, which gives you a negative 3 as your level. Then I'm going to find my max, so that's going to be my level, plus my amplitude, which gives you a 2. Then I need to find my minimum, which is going to be my level minus my amplitude, which is a negative 8. So now I found my max, level, and min. Are we all good? You good? Okay. What do I do next? Starting point and ending point, right? So if I'm looking for my starting point and my ending point, my starting point, I'm going to take the junk inside the parentheses instead of equal to 0. Pi x over 2 plus pi over 2 is equal to 0. I'm going to multiply everything by 2. Pi x plus pi is equal to 0. Pi x equals negative pi, x equals negative 1. How do I find my ending point? Same exact concept, except for this time I'm setting equal to 2 pi. Multiply everything by 2, so that's pi x plus pi is equal to 4 pi. Subtract pi, that's 3 pi, so x is stopping at 3. How do I determine if what I did was accurate? All I have to do to check this is to know that my period better equal my starting point minus my ending point. So that's going to be negative 1 minus 3, which is negative 4, and the absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And that is my period. So what I've done is correct. Yes? So now I'm going to go ahead and make my x, my y, and my pattern. I'm starting at negative 1, and I'm adding 1 unit, so that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. Yes? I added 1, which is my interval, every time. What is my pattern of sign? Level, max, level, min, level. Because my amplitude is positive. So therefore, when I plug and chug, I'm going to land on the quadrant angle of 0 for the first one. The sign of 0 is going to be 0 times 5 is going to be negative 3 whenever I add the minus of 3 to it. Yes? And that was my level. Then down here, this is going to make me land on pi over 2. Pi over 2, the sign of that is going to be 1 times 5 is 5, minus 3 is negative 2, or it should be positive 2, as my max. Yes? 1 times 5 minus 3 is positive 2. Then I come back here to my negative 3, and then this is going to be my negative 8, and this is going to be my negative 3. How do I graph this? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. At 1 1, I'm at level, which is going to be down here at -3. At 0, I'm going to be up to my maximum. At 1, I'm back down to my level. At +2, I'm going to be down here at -8. And then I'm back here at my level. And there's my sine graph. Do we understand that? Yes or no? You have 2 of those. That is the test. The rest of the time, I want you guys, you have about 15 minutes left almost. I want you to work on your Math Excel and get that done. The test is tomorrow. What you don't get done with it tomorrow, you can finish it on Tuesday. Yes?